how many companies control the whole food system?
Well, I started to look very closely at this when I started to look after that meeting of 87, where they said we'll have a GATT and trade-related intellectual property rights and a WTO, and we'll make it illegal to save seeds. So I started to follow WTO. And I became part of a member of the International Forum on Globalization that created the Seattle protests, and we stopped WTO. It was supposed to be the most powerful institution, and people organized to shut WTO down, not just in Seattle, but later in Cancun too. So at that point, there was the poison cartel, 5 companies, now they're 4, wanting to control the seed through GMOs and patenting. There were 5 grain traders, merchants of grain, like the Cargills and the Conagras, who were writing the free trade in agriculture. Monsanto wrote the TRIPS agreement, Cargill wrote the agriculture agreement. So now there are 4 because Cargill bought Continental. Then there's something called sanitary and phytosanitary agreement. And one would think it's about health. No, these are pseudo-hygiene measures to make real food illegal, to make that wonderful cheese of Italy illegal, to make the wonderful snacks in India illegal. They even shut down Gandhi's cold-pressed virgin oil mill because they said to make oil, you have to have 2 chemists and a lab. But if I'm making the oil in front of my eyes with my own groundnut, how do I need a lab? I know my organic groundnut is pure. So I did a satyagraha, this civil disobedience and a march, and we protected Gandhi's Ghani. So who are the people who create these pseudo-hygiene measures? Leading it is Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Nestle, the junk food industry. That time it was a group of 3, but basically adding up to 12. Then you started to get the Amazons and the Walmarts, into the retail and e-commerce. So they've joined hands and they are driving. Walmart drives and shapes agriculture very hugely. And as I mentioned, and it's in my book, Oneness versus 1%, the giant billionaire investment funds, the BlackRocks and the Vanguard, and Bill Gates, Microsoft. If you look at new initiatives in agriculture, they're all about digital agriculture. They're about farming without farmers. They're about surveillance. They're about one agriculture all over the world. He launched it last year, just at the time of the COVID, and calls it Gates Ag One agriculture for the whole world of diversity. And this too is in our report, Gates to a Global Empire. So, and they've joined hands, So there's the old big ag, the poison cartel, big ag, big junk food, big e-commerce, big retail, big finance, and big tech. And they've become one cancer on the food system. And if we allow their control to grow, there will be no food, because Gates is investing very heavily on artificial food, fake food, lab food, cellular, milk without cows and fish without fish. And again, in this book of his, he's got say, cellular meat in the lab is exactly like a living animal. Yeah. How can it be? How can one cell being grown out artificially? How can your Impossible Burger with 14 patents be real food? So we are finding an interesting convergence, a dangerous convergence, and one thing that's very important for people to know. So we created after the war UN agencies, a Food and Agriculture Agency for food, one country, one vote, a World Health Organization for health, one country, one vote, the Convention on Biological Diversity, one country, one vote, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, one country, one vote. Now you look at all these agencies. Who's calling the shots on climate? Mr. Gates. Who's calling the shots on biodiversity? Mr. Gates. Who's calling the shots on health? You just watched him as the single biggest funder and controller of Gavi and WHO. But most people have not noticed that the FAO, which is located in Rome, has always had a food summit in Rome. Gates has hijacked it and taken it to New York. 500 organizations that have participated over the years for food sovereignty and defending food as a right have decided to boycott. Because if we allow the UN system to be hijacked by a billionaire, there is no international platform for protecting the environment and protecting public health and defending democracy and defending human rights. And that, but then we can say, okay, we have then a global dictatorship.
Can you explain what seed saving is and why it's important?
Well, seed is the first link in all of life. Life begins a seed. And in a food system, food begins a seed. So a rice seed gives me rice plants, a millet seed gives me millet plants. But one seed can give you 1,000, 1,000,000. Seed saving basically means you take part of it and eat it. And it gives you food. But you save part of it for the future and sow it, so you get future food. So seed is future food. Now, that's where industry came in and said, oh my gosh, farmers save seed, so we can't make money. So they worked on preventing farmers from making money, either legally through patenting, because if something's patented, you can't save it, but also through biological methods. Hybrids don't be true, and GMO hybrids can't be used again. So they worked on making seed from being a renewable, life-giving resource to a non-renewable commodity. So how do you save seed? Take real seed and save part of it. Of course, you have to know exactly what kind of drying it needs. You have to be careful. Seed is living. One of my colleagues who has saved 1,400 varieties of rice in Orissa, when she talks to farmers, I heard her so beautifully. You say, oh, but so difficult. So she says, if you have 4 kids, don't you take care of all of them? Yes, we do. So we used to grow 200 kinds of rice. Why are you growing only one? Why do you think the other rices are not relevant? They are our children, but they are our plant children. So saving seeds is seed freedom and seed sovereignty for the farmer. Saving seed is the freedom of the seed itself to renew, because all technologies are preventing seed from renewing. And the nature of seed is to multiply, to regenerate, to renew. And therefore the urge of seed is respected when we save seeds. And most important, our work has shown that when you save seeds, you change the farm economy, because the highest costs are going for buying non-renewable patent seed, which requires chemicals. All breeding has been done by chemical companies in order to sell more chemicals, whether it's through genetic engineering or even the Green Revolution varieties were bred for using more fertilizer. That's what Borlaug's work was, and that's why he made the semi-dwarf varieties. So saving seeds is important because seed is life. And in seed sovereignty lies food sovereignty, your freedom. You cannot have food freedom if you don't have seed freedom.